Good morning and happy Wednesday to each and every one of you. I pray that yesterday you found some spaces where you could smile, where you could laugh, where you could just enjoy being alive. In yesterday's video, I talked about the idea of not being so hard on ourselves and not beating ourselves up when we make mistakes. And I mentioned that today I would follow up with some of the challenges that comes when we recognize that we've made a mistake, that we've treated someone the way that they should not have been treated. We said some things we should not have said. And I suggested that when that happens, we should first forgive ourselves and then ask the person we've offended for their forgiveness. But I also mentioned that that can come with challenges. So today I want to focus on why that may come with challenges. For many, you may have been raised in an environment where mistakes were not tolerated, where if things were not done exactly the way they should be done, there would be repercussions. For a number of years, I worked with combat veterans and people who have served in the military. And one common theme, particularly for people who are what they call military brats, whose parent had been in the military when they were growing up or when they were raising their children themselves, that for a lot of people, the way that they interacted with their troops is the way they interacted with their children. The same line of perfection that they expected from their troops is the same line that they expected from their children. And that can be quite problematic because there is a great difference between your troops who have to follow the mandates and guidelines and the dictates of the military and your children who are learning and growing and will make mistakes because that's a part of the natural developmental process. So as a result, though, if you were raised in environments where mistakes were not tolerated. I don't want to imply it's just for military people, because for some people, particularly for African Americans, we come from a legacy of slavery. Whereas if things were not done correctly, that could mean death to the slave. And unfortunately, as we've moved out of slavery and we've moved into ongoing generations, some of that same mindset has continued to be in place. There's no tolerance for a mistake. There's no tolerance for ambiguity. For a lot of us, we were raised in households where the parent or the caregiver said, I better not say it more than one time, which means that that doesn't leave a whole lot of emphasis for mistakes. Now, you may say, well, why should I repeat myself? They're just not paying attention. But for some people who process things more slowly, have you considered maybe it wasn't that they were not paying attention, maybe it took them longer to process what you were saying. But if we do not put into place the idea that people may not do things exactly the way we want things done, if there's not a place for ambiguity, if there's not a place for variety, we will feel like the things were not done in a perfect manner. And so when we have harmed someone and we know that we've harmed someone and we have given ourselves permission to not beat ourselves up, the challenge in admitting to the other person and asking for their forgiveness is because we have to then reveal ourselves as being vulnerable, as being not as in control as we would like to portray. For those of us who've been traumatized, the idea of needing to be in control over everything, everyone in our environment is extremely important, because we have made it determined in our mind that I never want to be caught off guard again, because it was when I was caught off guard is when the trauma occurred. So the goal is to make sure that I'm in control of everything that affects me. But being in control of everything that affects you means that you then set up rigid guidelines that may or may not be appropriate for every situation, or the guidelines that you have for yourself may not work for someone else. And so the whole idea of being able to apologize becomes problematic, because apologies for some means I'm admitting that I was not perfect. I'm admitting that I may have made a mistake. I'm admitting that I don't know everything. I'm admitting that my way of doing things is not the only way. But I'm here to tell you even though I recognize how difficult that may be, that again, we can start with baby steps. The baby step in the beginning is to recognize that we are all imperfect beings here on this planet. There is not a person who is breathing who is perfect. Once we recognize that we're all imperfect, that we all have imperfections, the second piece is to recognize that we may all define perfection quite differently. You know, for some, if I remember watching my daughter dance as she was growing up. And I would be at the performance and I would think it was the best thing possible. And when I would see her when she came from backstage and said, that was fabulous, how'd you feel? She would go, I messed up. I turned my foot left when it should have been right. And I'm like, what? Who noticed that but you? But for her, the goal of being perfect in what she was doing sometimes overshadowed just enjoying the performance. And I think a lot of us have a lot to learn from that example. We're so focused on trying to be perfect, we are not enjoying the people around us. We're not enjoying the activities around us. We're not enjoying all these things that's been presented in our world to give us joy and peace. We won't try things because we don't think it's going to be perfect. But I'm going to call you beloved again. But beloved, let me tell you, life is about exploring. Life is about experimenting. Life is about trying new things. Life is about getting outside of your comfort zone, outside of the rigidity that you may have placed on yourself, and learning to love yourself just as much as I love you. And you may say, well, you don't even know me. How do you love me? I know you because we are the same. We are human beings all trying to live this life as best as we can. And on that note, have a wonderful day on purpose.